AI's been in the news. It's been in the news way too much. AI should really just be a feature, and it should be so boring we don't think about it, we just use it. Join me on the Tech Field Day podcast to hear how AI has to become boring. Welcome to the Tech Field Day podcast, where we bring together a group of IT technical experts to discuss a single idea around key concepts in the industry. This podcast features a variety of perspectives from members of the Tech Field Day delegate community and is often recorded in association with one of our events. Tech Field Day is part of the Futuring Group, and this podcast is also published on our sister company's website, TechStrong TV. On this episode, as we head into AI Infrastructure Field Day, we'll be discussing how AI should become boring. But before the discussion, let's meet who's on today's panel.
Hi, I'm Guy Currier. I'm an analyst at Futurum Group, as well as chief analyst for Visible Impact, which is a division of Futurum. And I actually read about and get briefed on and talk a lot about AI and AI infrastructure. And so far, it hasn't been boring, but I kind of wonder if maybe it should be.
And I'm Jay Cuthrell. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Nexus Tech. I have done a few of these now, I think. And not only should AI be boring, it should be boringly available in more places at competitive prices that are affordable for everyone around the family, spending time together, enjoying their AI.
Hey, and I'm Max Mortillaro. I'm head of research at Osmium Data Group and analyst as well. And I concur on the fact that AI should be boring and possibly transparent and everywhere pervasive.
And of course, I'm Alastair Cooke. I'm the event lead for AI Infrastructure Field Day at Tech Field Day. I also have maybe a background on infrastructure build out, and that's kind of an interesting thing because infrastructure is supposed to disappear. If you're doing infrastructure right, it disappears away and nobody even notices it's there. It's kind of tough when budget time comes around, but really that is the role. And I guess as we're starting to look at AI, the future of AI, where AI is going to be in our lives, maybe we want it to disappear. Maybe we want it to not be the center of our focus and the center of our costs as it's been for a while. Guy, you've seen this sort of excitement in AI that really we'd like to get past.
Well, let's start with where infrastructure becomes visible to those not monitoring it. It's typically when there's a problem. And so, one way we definitely would like AI to be boring, and it should be boring, is that its use should enhance what we're doing, support us, do stuff we don't necessarily want to do to help us do more stuff we do want to do. But if it becomes interesting because it messes with us, I think that's probably a bad thing. One of the other elements when you think about whether AI should be boring or not, though, is innovation and development. I mean, we're really early in AI. And so a lot of what makes AI interesting, especially from an infrastructure standpoint, is that much as the general strategy in AI has been to throw as much as you possibly can at it, starting with as much data as you can. I should add, without necessarily curating that data, but also storage resources, of course, bandwidth, compute. That's what the GPU's involvement is all about. That's a pretty boring approach. I think a way more interesting approach can get a lot more out of AI. And that's one way that maybe AI should not be boring, as in, if you're hosting and trying to get AI to work within your organization, within applications, work for the users, that's actually quite interesting and should be interesting for a while as we figure out all the kinks.
I'll jump onto that one. So let's assume that in the past we had business intelligence centers of competency back in the old Gartner days. So we're talking decades. And then everyone's, oh, we can do embedded intelligence. And so that embedded intelligence, we feel like that intelligence word now has this word artificial tacked onto the front of it. And the key question might be, for all the wonderful, whether it's a beautiful magical donut saying how compliant we are or not compliant we are, whether it's a gauge saying how empty or full we are on our goals or what we're trying to do for the business, is there anything that, whether it's agentic or any of these other terms that are coming forward, MCP, A2A, and other things that purport to help connect all this stuff together towards an outcome. Why isn't that happening faster? You know, what could be more beautiful than seeing all that promise of what happened decades ago becoming actually more real with the AI that's available in market right now today? And so that's the part where I think there's sort of a disconnect. There's CEOs that see this huge opportunity, and maybe they're a little overconfident in that from some of the other Futurum research that we've heard of. But at the same time, there is, to your point, on the infrastructure layers, there's everyone just kind of manically trying to stitch all this stuff together to stay ahead of what they believe this next model is going to require, let alone the application scaffolding on top of it that has a product experience that the users will not only be attracted to, but actually adopt, use, and then make that more of the DNA of how business gets done. So that's, again, I think AI needs to be more boring than it is currently. And the only way I think to get there is to mature all the people, tools, and processes around that to where we're going from the possible to the permissible to the repeatable, sustainable, then repeatable, then advisable, getting all those ibles and ables out of the way. That's when we're cooking with Crisco, to use the old Crisco term. But those are just my thoughts, because you kind of like, Guy, you lit me up a little bit. That's exactly this point that you made is well taken. We sort of almost have to put away some childish things and get on with the order of bigger, higher order business.
Thanks, Jay. I will say that what you reminded me of is how AI became boring very fast after about 3 months because everybody was talking about it. And by everybody, I mean all the vendors. All the vendors were talking about it, and they were all saying the same things, and they were all incorporating AI. And every now and then you would see something interesting. For the most part, you would see the same thing over and over again, which itself was, I guess, interesting, nonetheless boring. So I almost feel like you're talking about a cycle. It gets boring, and then someone does something interesting.
I think one of the things we're seeing is that it still feels very early in AI. I still think we're just at the beginning of AI. And maybe it's not time yet for that to be boring. Maybe this is still the time when we're seeing a lot of innovation and a lot of change. In fact, I'm pretty sure we're getting past the point where you just slap the word AI onto everything and your stock price goes up, the same as it used to be when you slap crypto on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Max, are you seeing vendors just actually getting to the point where AI is the thing they're actually doing rather than a label that they apply to what they've always done?
Yeah, I think that Jay and Guy had really great points at the beginning. The first one was around, getting your data in place. I think that's the alpha and omega of starting to do anything with AI. So whenever I hear someone in my organization starting with huge projects about we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, the thing I'm thinking about first is, do we have curated data sets? Are we able to do something with the data before we start, putting the how do you say, the cart ahead of the horse, and start, thinking about what infrastructure we're going to design, what tools we want to use, and so on. The other thing, moving to the part which is a bit more familiar to me, because of course I'm also looking at what's happening in the AI space using GPTs and whatever you want to call it, but I try to look at it from a practical perspective. I think Jay said it before. Organizations are trying to kind of deal with those budgets, which are getting, gouged every year, year over year. They're trying to kind of sometimes keep this huge dumpster fire, kind of preventing it from spreading. And when you hear, some vendors which are talking about AI and slapping AI on whatever product that they have, you're kind of thinking, what the hell is going on here? I mean, those guys here on the trenches are just trying to survive. So to me, it's a long introduction just to get to the point that what people want is boring AI that helps me solve a practical problem. It's where I think that the most, I mean, in my opinion, the most practical, the most successful implementations of AI in products are copilots, things that help you, accelerate your job, identify what's going on, but also there's enough safety in there so that, the AI is not kind of hallucinating and telling you that everything's fine while you have some major infrastructure problems. I don't know what you guys think about that.
When we're talking about problems, it means that we have not achieved a level of maturity in a particular, could be a layer in a particular domain. Um, I think we could be very provocative as a group and say, like, oh, networking is the problem. Oh, storage is the problem. Oh, the compute and the availability of the compute, or what we think we may or may not be experiencing with our supply chains over the next, several years. Those might be, oh, no, no, no. It's actually the software. It's the abstraction layer. We don't have a better scheduler. Need a better scheduler. We now need the next level, which is, oh, we need product engineering. We need product by design. We need secure by design. We need all these by design things to be baked into all these. And every vendor will be bringing us a shiny, shiny, shiny sprocket. And those shiny, shiny sprockets are amazing. Those are great stories in their small part of the, if you think about like a large epic and the smaller little stories and vignettes that go into it. But what we have to have for AI to be boring is we have to have that look like a consistent system, a machine that's actually operating for the benefit of those that are going to be utilizing that machine. So if technology is the response to a perceived need to be Kuhn like, we need to see more perception within the larger mass of the market. Say like, I need my AI boring. I need it to talk to other AIs. I need it to just be something I've taken for granted. And I think some of the challenges we're running through right now is within whether it's observability, which Guy brought up earlier, Max, your points around where challenges might be. I think we still need to progress the art towards more of a science, a deterministic outcome. So in our data centers right now, we've heard vendors in the networking space, not to pick on networking, by the way. No one gets a free lunch in this, but deterministic power, weight, cooling, and geometry. When we had Arista in a prior event tell us about the math, the sheer like terrifying math of what's required for this planet to light up all the things that we required for the AI models and what their hunger is. Um, we have to do something about that. So whether we're exploring material science, where we're looking at how we could be better at turning things off when they're not in use, the promise of that cloud and elasticity, are we bringing that to practice? As practitioners, are we embracing that? So, again, between Max, Guy, and I think Alistair, to your earlier point, there's probably places we could kind of poke at it to say where the laggard is, but I think it's still about the system. And so, any one thing like a chain, it's that weakest link.
I think that you're reminding me of something I learned a long time ago. If I remember rightly, it's the work of Karl Popper, who said that we build up these structures and build up our understanding until we get a point of clarity where we collapse things down and start building another paradigm of construction. Um, I'm hoping, and I've been hoping this for probably the last year, we will build a new or come to a new insight on a new paradigm for building AI, because simply moving to these larger and larger models with more and more resource requirements to gain a business outcome, I just can't see that being sustainable. Continuous growth forever, and particularly exponential growth continuous, is not a sustainable, it's not a tenable situation. I'm hoping we will have a sort of collapse of technologies into a mature set of technologies we can simply use and engage with far less um, resources that seem to be being consumed without necessarily a lot of business value.
I think Alistair, and Jay, I think that's what something like MCP, the latest craze in MCP, and the craze in particular, what it promises. MCP is essentially, at least in spirit, certainly, and well, in effect, it's an open system of interconnection and integration, not AI to AI or AI to data, or it's all of the above. And what does that do? I mean, A to A does something. I don't want to leave that out, but just taking MCP as an example, um, that makes things boring in a certain way, which is that you can build to MCP. Uh, Alistair, I don't know if you were at the Tech Field Day where I gave a little presentation on the three AI life cycles, that was the subject of my uh, mini talk. But I started with a rant, which I have started before and maintained ever since then, which is that there's no such thing as an AI application. And maybe we'll be allowed to do a podcast with that provocative title. My point was that there is no AI application, there are AI services. AI services, or one AI service, may be the service that supports the application, which is a chat application. So 90% of it might be that service, but the chat application, if you're interacting with it, for all you know, it may have an army of people behind it, as opposed to an AI service. It could have, other kinds of services. So what's my point? My point is, well, first of all, models are getting larger and larger, but now there are small language models, SLMs, and other Small models have existed for a while, and an understanding of how those work and where those work, that kind of diversity was completely inevitable. But if you don't have some kind of standard framework in which to present the your golden AI service trained however you like, um, then it's too interesting, and it's interesting in a bad way. So you would rather have this be boring, which is, oh, that looks interesting. I will deploy it because it's MCP compatible or whatever compatible. I can simply deploy it, incorporate it. I don't have to worry about the ecosystem. I don't have to worry about the provider. I don't have to worry about that, or the other thing. I can be inventive and keep the interesting part my application, not the AI.
I think we were both discussing all of that before. The fact that you want your AI system or systems to be interacting together, you want them to be able to talk the same language, to have some kind of API integrations, and to have a way to change the pieces in case something goes wrong. I mean, the current situation in the world is really interesting in terms of moving from a what do we say, free trade global environment to more country-centric sovereign approaches. So I think that this is also important in terms of what solutions you're selecting. Of course, this is going towards the use of LLMs or SLMs, whereas we might be also considering specific implementations of AI as a feature within some products. um, the other thing as well, which was really important, what Alastair said before, is that we have very, very complex infrastructure systems, or at least I have this kind of view at the customers with whom I interact, and we're adding yet another layer in the hope of solving that on top of dozens of other layers, right? So, and to what Jay said before was really interesting to me. It's really, how can we use AI in a boring way, which is, how does this helps me simplify, flatten out everything, look at the things, make things simpler? AI that is not here, to generate, stupid pictures, but AI which is here to help solve the problems of the world, the mathematical problems, how to have cleaner energy or how to have better sources of energy, how do we optimize our systems, whatever. For me, that is the kind of the ultimate, value that we get. Not that I don't get a ton of things from ChatGPT, right? But getting something which adds to the greater goods, basically.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, I agree. Us taking all of our pictures here and then avataring us to where we look like, Japanese animation, which is in some ways, if you're part of that community and you believe in that as an art form, you might believe or perceive that to be very insulting. And I think even the creator of that style, that form, is mortally offended by what is actually happening. So when we think about the application of what we'd call this new boring AI that we're waiting for, it would be, there's the knowledge worker requirements. And so if we said that, like, what's the toil in a given day that by adding this essential boring AI to it, that toil is removed. I've referred to it before as the ruthless removal of annoyance. And so in our day-to-day workday, if you're in the physical world where AI might be assistive, is by combining things like computer vision, other types of remote sensing, telemetry, where atoms are involved. I think we also get heavily rotated around this whole knowledge worker only view of the world, where we're just passing around bits. There is absolutely a real world made of atoms out there. And how that AI interacts at the edge, where literally most of this data that's meaningful is being created, those are the things where the boring AI has to be boring AI. I don't want to work with a machine, for example, that has not become very boring and very well understood. If I put my hand in there, I want to know that it's going to determine, yes, that's in fact a human hand and not the actual part that needs to be stamped next. So, not to make it awful, but we need to make sure that we're not introducing the worst of the lessons learned from the Industrial Revolution and the prior Industrial Revolutions. So in this next quote unquote Industrial Revolution, how can we have the most boring AI possible? All the safeguards in place, all of the other elements that I think we have poked around at the edges of, again, going back to that laggard, settler, and pioneer view. That's why I think what's sort of missing. How do we remove the relevant toil of today? And that's because the AI that we're using to solve for some of that has been applied, and it's almost de facto. So anyway, that was my thought based on what you talked about, Max, and weaving in Guy, and then thinking about Alistair's earlier points. We have to think about where the use case is that's real world. And it may not be knowledge, it may be actually in the physical world.
And there's a huge existing set of applications where AI is just a feature, where in particular, predictive AI, not the generative AI that's going to create a new sentence for you or a new video for you, but the old fashioned machine learning, what we've had for the last 20 years, where it's essentially statistically, this is the most likely next event in the physical world. If the temperature is changing in this way in our greenhouse, this is the point at which we need to change things to get optimal conditions. So there absolutely is boring AI out there.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good thing yeah, it's a good thing is what we're kind of, AI should be boring. And I'm just wondering though, maybe everything should be boring. Maybe it's a general principle. I mean, certainly to your point, Alistair, when you introduced this topic, um, infrastructure should be boring. I guess. I don't know. Like, are we talking about for the operator, the creator of AI or infrastructure, or are we talking about for the users of it, or for both? If AI gets boring enough, then I guess we'll have AI to run the AI because it will be the boring things AI does for us so that we can do the more interesting things. I think that it's a good principle in general. Are you building infrastructure to support AI? Are you building AI models and seeking infrastructure to run it? In the end, what you want to do is to uncomplicate things for users, or even if the users are operators or the users are developers, uncomplicate things for them, make things simpler and more straightforward, allow them to use the tools without struggling with the tools. That's a lot of what AI promises to do. And in that sense, if it just becomes second nature, it's boring and it's helping you.
Well, we are running towards the end of time. As always, we could spend a lot more time discussing this, and we probably will spend quite a bit more time discussing this at AI Infrastructure Field Day. By the time you're watching this video, we might already have had that discussion, and Guy, Jay, and Max will be part of my delegate panel for the 4 days of AI Infrastructure Field Day. If people would like to continue that conversation with you, where can they find you to carry on that conversation?
You can find me at futurumgroup.com where you'll see my research and analysis. But where you will see the most from me is LinkedIn.
You can find Jay Cuthrell at all major retailers. It's available on aisle 3. And otherwise, you would go to my blog, which is fudge.org, or hot.fudge.org, which is my newsletter, or you can go to jcuthrell.com, which is my main website. You can find me on LinkedIn, and if you're interested in Mastodon and tooting at me, go to cuthrell.com, and you can find me there.
So you can find me at osmiumdatagroup.com. We post regularly on LinkedIn. So there again, follow us at Osmium Data Group. Same on YouTube. Social media wise, no with AI. Uh, on Blue Sky at Max Mortillaro. I'm also on Mastodon at Max Mortillaro, but seldom there. If you want to read some insights about me ranting about stuff which is non-IT, go to camshin.com. I'll send the link afterwards. Thank you.
And of course, I'm Alastair Cooke, and you can find me on LinkedIn and across Tech Field Day properties and the wider Futurum Group properties. In particular, techstrong.it is one of the places that you'll find things that I've written about, some of the interesting things we're doing. If you do want to find your way to Jay, Guy, and Max, and all of my other awesome delegate panels for AI Infrastructure Field Day 2, head across to the Tech Field Day website and find the event AI Infrastructure Field Day 2. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Tech Field Day podcast. If you enjoyed the discussion, please subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast application so you don't miss an episode. And do consider giving us a rating and a nice review so other people get to find us too. This podcast was brought to you by Tech Field Day, home of IT experts from across the enterprise and a part of the Futurum Group. For upcoming events and more episodes, head to techfieldday.com/podcast or view us on TechStrong TV. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.